So it's 7th of March, that's for sure, a day before International Women's Day, celebrated around the world for decades now. But today, it's the 7th, and it's been Women's Week. We're looking at a number of issues. And as we celebrate International Women's Day tomorrow, we'll be talking today about the International Day of Women Judges, championing for rights, equality and empowerment for all women and girls. It is a Justice Friday conversation today. And joining us in the room, Lady Justice Hellen Omondi is a Court of Appeal judge and the president of the International Association of Women Judges, and also joined by Honorable Jane Kamau, who is a principal magistrate and vice secretary of the Kenya chapter of the International Association of Women Judges. Good morning to both of you, honorables.
Good morning. Good morning.
Karibuni sana. Justice Omondi, you've been with us before, and it's good to have you in the seats this morning. So we're going to welcome you both in true Situation Room style. CT has been, hobnobbing around different African countries as he does. And we see you, Justice, with that smile because you get it. He's going to share the proverb and he'll tell you which country it's from, and then both of you can tell us what your interpretation of that proverb would be. Is that all right? Okay.
Yes, we're in the land of honest people, otherwise known as Burkina Faso. The names were derived from two communities, Burkina and then Faso. Yes. These are the dominant communities in Burkina Faso, the Maore and the Dioula. But this country has 60 distinct languages that are considered national. Here you talk national languages, you 1 or 2.
Yeah.
60. Okay. Then they have what they call formal languages that are used. That's French and English. This country has had upheavals like probably very few on the continent, but they form part of what we call the Coup Belt of West Africa. Mm-hmm. The Coup Belt, the name is suggestive and it's accurate. Countries that have gone through several decades of one coup after another, after another, after another, after another. And despite its wealth, both in human resource, land and minerals, it's one of the poorest countries on the planet. But the gentleman who took over recently, called Ibrahim Traore, mm-hmm. he is definitively looking like he's changing all that. He's putting things in order and he's making the changes. Now the proverb.
Mm-hmm. We're going to get there.
When the ants unite their mouths, they can carry an elephant. Ants as in Siafu, not ant as in your father's sister. Yes. When ants unite their mouth, they can carry an elephant.
Let's start with you, Honorable Kamau. How would you interpret that?
Thank you. It's a well-known proverb. Mm. I'll look at it this way. So I'll look at it in the aspect of what we do every day as an association. So the Chief Justice has enabled us to have a platform called STAJ, Social Transformation on Access to Justice. Mm-hmm. And all of us, judges and magistrates, do our work. But as IAWJ, we are the ants. Mm-hmm. So what we do is that we empower our membership, which is a small membership of the judiciary, through trainings to get better at their work. So the elephant is the judiciary, but we are the ants. So together as IAWJ, we enable judiciary, which is the elephant, to do a better job. So I look at it that way.
Wow.
Yes.
How about a real life representation of a problem? I love it.
Okay.
Lady Justice Omondi, how would you?
What comes to my mind is what I learned when I was in primary school. Many hands make light work. As simple as that.
Yeah.
It's just about getting together so as to be able to take up the task. Whatever task one comes across, absolutely. Whether it is in the profession or even within the community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Punctuation is everything. As a child, when I first heard of that, I was puzzled. how is it that when you put your hands together you have electricity? I associate the word light with a bulb. Yes, it's until I grew up a little more in my youth that I realized that's not what they were talking about.
In this time it's weight.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we're looking at a conversation around, I think it coincides beautifully with some of the other things that we talk about when we look at March 8th being International Women's Day and looking at Women's Week, but then we're also looking at International Day of Women Judges. Can we just start with, first of all, International Day of Women Judges, how this came about, and why it then is important for us to discuss as we get into some of the issues that would surround it. We can start with you, Lady Justice.
Thank you. The International Day of Women Judges, unfortunately, is not as well known as the International Day of Women.
Yeah.
Probably because this is more closed into a single profession, unlike women globally. But it came about when our mother association, the International Association of Women Judges, began to make a push so that what women in the justice sector, in the legal sector do would be more pronounced and be made known, and that it wouldn't sit in our comfort zones, but would reach out to be able to show the world what we as women do within the justice sector. And that is how then it began to be pushed through UNESCO, I think, and adopted the General Assembly, UN General Assembly. UN General Assembly, that now adopted it as a day that would be marked worldwide.
Okay. Yeah. And so what are some of the things that we push, or what are some of the things that we commemorate, celebrate on this International Day of Women Judges?
Some of the things that we celebrate, I think, is just the ability of women to be daring, to be brave enough to want to bring change, to make pronouncements that reflect a gender-sensitive approach, to be able to make decisions that impact on policies, that impact on cultural change behavior, that transforms the society into a society where men and women are treated with dignity and are treated as equals and given equal opportunity.
Okay, so what are some of the things, for you, Honorable Kamau, that have stood out, that need addressing, and still today, that need addressing within these particular circles? Because we're also talking about championing the rights of women and girls and things like that. What are some of the things that we've not achieved yet?
We have discussed for several years, decades, on gender-based violence. And it seems that we are not, it's not reducing. For example, in Kenya, we have seen all these femicides and gender-based violence. That is something that I feel that we need to champion it more. So the judiciary is doing something about it, and we are celebrating that through our association and through the judiciary, we've been able to segregate these matters that are brought to us, gender-based violence, in different courts, in a separate court from the rest, so that we are not putting the victims together with other victims of fraud and all that. So we have sexual gender-based courts that have been established. That's a big thing. We started in Mombasa, and we have rolled out in Siaya and Kisumu and going on throughout the country. That is something that we need to celebrate. We also need to celebrate the fact that through the association and looking at the law in a gender lens, we were able to formulate the family division, separating the matters so that the people coming to these courts are able to receive justice quicker in a specialized way. So we have the family division, we have the children's court. So it is something that we need to continue championing and get more innovative in other ways in which we can bring justice closer to Wanjiko or to Omondi or to any other person. Yeah.
What informed the decision to begin these courts in the jurisdictions or in the areas where you began them?
There was a study to see the prevalence of sexual assault in those areas. For example, the Shanzu court, we have Kwale. So what would happen in Kwale is that there is a lot of early marriages, A lot of people are not well educated. There is the children, there is FGM as well in those places. So doing a research using our partners, there was statistics that informed that court, so that we start that court as a pioneer court to see how it works and to see if we will bring jurisprudence that will be able to enable other courts to be formulated. Yes.
So of all the places in the country where you see the same thing you've mentioned, early marriages,
yes,
gender-based violence.
Yes.
So would they naturally not be the next places you would take the courts? Because you've said Kisumu, then somewhere in the environs.
Yes.
So what you're saying is that data pointed to these places as being hotspots.
Yes.
Okay, now, when you talk about gender equality, and you have a court that deals with some of these matters, yes, that I can see. But to the person who is receiving this equality, what should it look like? How does a young girl, how does a woman in these rural places understand that
you're now equal with somebody?
Yes, I am now experiencing this change that I've heard people talk about, and it's at last it has arrived at my doorstep.
So, apart from just sitting in court, we have meetings with the stakeholders. So each court, through the administration of justice at the top, we have what we call court users committees in each court.
Yeah.
And they are comprising of police, ODPP, whoever, doctors. So they make policies and they go out there and sensitize the communities. So each court is mandated to ensure its environs is aware that there's a sexual gender-based court, that this is what you're going to receive, this is what you should look out for. So as the common lady comes to court, she's already aware. We've gone to marketplaces, we have open days, like what we are celebrating now. Tomorrow we will be going to open days, we'll be going to prisons, we'll be going to children's homes and all that. So people will know that this is what I should expect. And also as a judiciary, we are quite, let me talk about the association. We are very vibrant in sensitization programs. So people are always aware this is what they'll find. If they are not aware, you walk into the nearest court. Nowadays we have court customer desks at the front. And these people who are seated at the customer desks are supposed to, they're empowered. They have information. So you can just get the information from there. Yeah.
And as well, we live in interesting times as a country where the Constitution itself pronounces itself in matters to do with gender equality. Yet we know achieving that has been an issue, has been a problem. We know even the retired Chief Justice pronounced himself in this as a judiciary in just making sure that the law is followed, that gender equality is a reality, and that this is also understood by the populace. What are you doing in just making sure, as she says, sensitization is happening, but it is also not as frequent as should be? So how are we bridging that gap? Yes.
Okay. Right. I think as human beings, do as I say rather than do as I do may not always work. Okay. So if we make those pronouncements, but the way we behave in court doesn't communicate my care for, especially the victim, they are now called survivors, then they still feel inhibited about true access to justice. We've come a long way. Previously, especially in sexual offenses, rape and defilement would be heard in open court with everyone there listening to all the gory details, and that alone would make the victim feel completely compromised and not say much.
Yes.
Nobody wants to describe what they went through in a sexual attack. And so one of the change in attitude, which we really hope we can communicate to those that come to court, is that now we have adopted a trauma-informed approach, so that even the language that we use the court setup. If we do not, if we are in a region that doesn't have the specialized courts, you clear the court so that it is just the minimum of those that are supposed to be in, the survivor, the perpetrator, the accused person, the prosecutor, and the court assistant and the judicial officer.
Yes.
And then the language that we use. We must be sensitive to the fact that we are Africans, and there are just certain body parts and certain language that doesn't sell. And because initially when the Sexual Offences Act was rolled out, everyone was expected to be as detailed as you can. Now you insist on a child who is saying doo-doo to mean a sexual organ, to say it, they won't.
They won't.
Yes, and so if you want to record that the victim is uncooperative and has not been able to communicate what it is, so we have to be sensitive to those that come to court,
right,
and show that we respect their dignity, we respect their background, we respect their culture.
Yeah. So, I mean, Justice, one of the things that I think that commemoration of days must do is to have conversations around emerging and sustained issues within that sector. Now, I remember a conversation that we had with you previously, and talking about these changes that have happened in court to be able to help victims. In this case, now that we call them survivors.
Yes.
So we have had also situations where individuals, knowing full well in their minds that a court or a magistrate or a judge would be sensitive to a survivor, have then used the position to bring about falsehoods. One. Two, a very famous case that we saw just a few weeks ago where a girl actually came and recanted her testimony that had put her father in jail for 20 years. So what positions are the courts taking, are judicial officers taking? Because we know if somebody, and we also look at the social aspects, if somebody cries rape today, our natural inclination is towards that individual, that something has happened to them. But we are seeing more and more. I mean, another in social media just a few days ago when somebody has accused another young man of raping her. And as we start to double click, we find out that maybe that's not the case. How is it being dealt with to be sure that the cases that are coming into court are actually solid, watertight cases?
Thank you. You see, the justice system, the court, it acts like a conveyor belt, because by the time the victim is making a report, the judicial officers are not part of that.
Yeah.
They make a report to the police then carry out their investigations, submit the file to the DPP for advice, and then it's brought to court. So up to that point, perhaps we would not have much. But getting back to what you say, it is a lived reality, especially in defilement cases, where perhaps it was not really defilement, it was more of a girlfriend-boyfriend situation, or things have just gone sour between a couple, and I know that I can use a child to hit at the father. The unfortunate bit about being in a judge or a magistrate is you rely on the evidence that is presented to you. And we know that there are instances where one can manufacture very, very well that it flows. And if I acquit, everyone will think, but what was going on in her head? The evidence is so clear. But what we are doing currently is, I think normally when the public does that, they don't even realize the seriousness of the penalty.
Absolutely.
It is a situation where you think, I'm going to teach him a lesson. He'll be in like a month, and then he'll have suffered enough, And then you realize that this is a statute that carries minimum harsh sentences, running from 15 years, 20 years to life.
Yes.
And that is when it falls on persons that actually we shouldn't have done that. So what are we doing? Exactly, outreaches. Outreaches so that we don't have to sing to the choir. The choir are the women who have been empowered so much to know that If someone so touches you without your consent, run to the police. But we also want to reach out to the men. The boda associations, the matatu operators associations, all the ones that now, the men, the boy child in the schools, to sensitize them about certain conduct between themselves and girls or women. And to just let them know that you have to be so careful, because even an innocent touch can easily be used against you.
Absolutely. I mean, I know today of a man who is serving his 19th year in Naivasha because he was in a bar essentially 20 years ago, and he touched a young girl who was serving in the bar. Didn't do anything beyond touching her. So that's the severity that we speak of. But you said something, I think that was interesting, that you said if something happens, you run to the police, right? But today, and I think this is something that we do need to really look at, that in some cases, and even if it is one case, for me, it's one case too many, where a reporting officer is going to ask for a sexual favor in order for them to attend to your case. That's happening today. We've had young women in the studio just a few months ago who've said, well, when we take these cases to police, they say, well, you know, how about you sleep with me and then I can attend to your case? This is in the justice system. This is within the system. Because we cannot run away from the players or the actors. It's not just the judiciary, it's not just judicial officers, it's the police, it's investigating officers, it's the officers, the DPP, all of this in this system. So who am I running to when I'm going to report and somebody's telling me, well, okay, how about you relive the trauma so that I can help you?
It's very sad, because we live in this country and we know that happens. But what I'm aware of is that the police have also engaged stakeholders. We have what we call gender desks. And this gender desk in each police station is manned by a trained gender-based violence officer. So you'll find a man or a woman. So they have been trained on what is a checklist, what am I looking for, so that the first point of interaction with the victim is this officer who is trained. So they're coming away. I don't work for the police, but I know that they're coming from that position where they were very aggressive, as you say, the examples, to this position where they want to bring justice. There is that justice. You know, you'll find one officer, you know, when you have one rotten egg, makes everyone else rotten. But generally, because we work together with the police in the association, we have a program where Equality Effect has trained police officers, has trained prosecution, and now are training Kenyan judiciary on how to handle victims. So we are hoping, because we live in the hope that in the future, in the next few months, let me not talk about years, we'll have that change. We'll not have women being told to replay their suffering to the policeman who they meet.
Indeed.
So we ask that women go straight to the gender desk, because we have gender desks in each police station. Yeah.
All right. Lady Justice Hellen Omondi and the Honourable Jane Kamau are our guests this hour, and looking at some of these issues and really double clicking and saying, okay, so what are the underlying issues that need to be taken care of, even as we commemorate this day and as you fight towards, you know, making sure that those rights are not just entrenched but practiced and protected, you know, as we go through. In adjudication of some of these things that come, what are the challenges that you've been facing so far, hoping to overcome? And I think that's for both of you this morning. What are some of those?
All right. I sit in the Court of Appeal.
Yes.
So I told you we are a conveyor belt.
Yes.
So what I do not have witnesses.
Yes.
Matters that come before me will have been heard before her. And then we'll have gone to the High Court, and then to my court. But that doesn't negate the challenges. I've been a magistrate, and I know that, as I told you, because we work within the justice system, there's the question of what you said, police not deliberately doing a shoddy job because one did not cooperate, quote unquote. Two is sometimes medical evidence, which can also be compromised. Three is societal pressure that maybe the perpetrator and the survivor are related, and there's a lot of pressure to compromise, and sometimes there's just threat including skirting the victim away to some unknown place. So you keep on. So when you keep hearing about delays, there is the question of that delicate balance between the right of the survivor getting justice, meaning getting their case being heard, as balanced with the right of the accused person, who also expects his case to be heard expeditiously. That is one challenge. Now, number two is just getting society to understand that, in vernacular, we do not have the word defilement. We have rape. Rape is very clear to everyone. It's without consent. And when, for me especially, it is when I see an 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old young man charged with defiling his 17-year-old girlfriend, not because he forced her into a sexual relationship, but because they engaged in sexual relations and she has probably gotten pregnant. And now he's charged with defilement because at 17 she doesn't have consent. The saddest part is when there's a baby who is a product. The father, who acknowledges that this is my child, is imprisoned for 20 years. The lady who is supposed to be the complainant is actually not complaining. But you see, in law, I am not the complainant. The state is the complainant. And she's probably being pushed by everyone else around her that this must go on. And then they come to court, and that happened a lot when I was in the High Court. And somebody raises her hand up and says, "Mimi naomba tu muniachie bwana yangu. I've already been chased away from home because I got pregnant. I embarrassed the family. My child is stigmatized because their father is in jail. And in Kenya, jail is criminal. You're a criminal." And it is sad. We had a case that we thought would have helped because, especially with the Sexual Offences Act, the sentences are mandatory, minimum sentences, and very harsh. We thought we had a window at one time when there was a case known as the Muratetu case, but that was clarified by the Supreme Court that only related to cases relating to murder. And so, for me, the biggest challenge and the saddest part and the most painful is when I have to confirm a sentence because, yes, it is an offense, but I wish there was a lighter way of dealing with this.
Allow me to just come in there because then, and we can still come to talk some of the challenges, but the thing about the law is that it looks as though it is that it is in this case cast in stone, and that we don't take into consideration some of these elements that you speak of, and I believe that it was Justice Odunga who has been quite verbal on this matter, saying that some of these things we have to take into consideration. So that's the question: does the law allow, as those who essentially decipher the law and then make judgments on it, can such things be taken into consideration? Please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, for goodness sake, if you can lock anybody up who takes away that freedom from somebody and throw away the key, by all means. But there are circumstances, again, where sometimes someone like Justice Linaola says, when we prescribe, we take into consideration all of the things that are happening around before we make a judgment. So is there room for discussion of some of these things? Like the woman who raises her hand and says, "Tafadhali munyachie bwana yangu."
Yes.
Because the situation that they see is not one of a crime. How do you deal with those issues to say that maybe some people were jailed? For example, the woman who had a relationship with a young man who was a border rider, but for all intents and purposes, they had a relationship. They loved one another, but he was 17 and looked like a 30-year-old man. What do you do?
I think there's a window. And the window is actually a pronouncement by the Supreme Court. Even when they made it clear that Muratetu only related to murder cases, they indicated that for those that have been imprisoned and the other offenses that carry mandatory sentences, they should bring in a constitutional petition, which would start in the High Court, the same way that Muratetu did. Muratetu had exhausted all the appeal systems before he so that and we keep saying this when they come to court, because during that time when there was this zeal of applying Muruatetu, most of them decided to abandon any appeal on conviction and only concentrate on sentence. And some of them are not aware that there was a Muruatetu 2 that now changed everything. And what then we advise them in court, can as many of you file constitutional petitions in the same spirit of Muruatetu, saying that those mandatory sentences then take away the court's power of discretion in courts considering similar offense but different situations. Yeah, so that once the High Court makes that pronouncement, if it's in their favor, well and good. If it's not, it follows the chain system until maybe to the apex court that would then now make a pronouncement in the same vein as Muruatetu. So there's that window. And each time persons come before us on appeal, we make that known to them both verbally and in our decisions. And we're hoping they'll take it up.
What is a constitutional petition?
A constitutional petition is where one files a complaint in court alleging violation of their constitutional rights. Okay? And then it comes to the High Court, and then one has to specify which rights are being violated. Okay? Like right to life, freedom of movement. So they'll identify the rights they feel have been violated, and then the court will be able to make a decision, a declaration that there's a violation or no violation. If there is a violation, then that would impact on the kind of sentences there are. And hopefully after all those pronouncements, that would also impact on legislation, that there would be a need to change that statute.
So we're seeing our judicial system is proactive, huh? Very good.
Oh, yes, yes. We are proactive.
Yes.
Because I think not wanting to appear as an activists, but we are proactive because we live in this society and we know what happens.
I think the issue is that the judiciary, as her leadership says, we are not activists. So you will not see us on the streets. You will not see us advertising ourselves. But we are now embracing sensitization so that people can know what is going on or what we are doing. You know, sometimes when you're too quiet, you seem like you're not aware of what is going on.
Or you don't care.
Or we don't care.
Yes.
But we do care. It's just that we have to be seen to be impartial. We cannot take sides. We cannot be seen to be taking placards that women are, this femicide and some, or these, we have to come. You come to us, to the courts.
Actually, let's think about this for a minute. What would happen if
it would be very interesting.
Yes, because I was just thinking. I mean, what would happen
it would be very
if Lady Justice here, with all those interesting things they put on their heads, and the gown in the street with the placard?
Yes, it would be very.
You would like that, wouldn't you?
Yeah. What would that look like?
And imagine now, after you find her on the streets, and then you go to court and you find she's all sober. Will you take her seriously?
Yes, I will.
No,
that actually
you're
is
one in a million.
No. That actually is the point. Everything that the judicial system has been doing is to make themselves easy to consume.
Yes.
Meaning you are putting on a human face. There's the law, there's a job we have to do, but we are not beyond reaching.
Yeah.
That has been the message.
Accessibility.
Yes, it's been there. Now, the moment that particular message is passed across, then the fear, because believe me, even at my tender age, judiciary, I hear my hair stands.
Yeah.
And the reason is because of my lived experience in my youth. Not that I went to jail.
Thank you for clarifying.
But anything that has to do with the judicial system is something that Kenyans want to avoid as much as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Yes. But
I think I don't have to do headstands and cartwheels for people to think that I'm human. But we have now made it very clear we are accessible. That is why we reach out. We no longer sit and wait for people to come and make those complaints. We reach out and have sensitization forums where people mingle with us. They can ask us questions without calling me Mheshimiwa, and just tell us anything, including telling us what we are doing that is wrong. unlike the past where it was all formal, if you have a complaint, write to the court and stuff like that. There's a whole system of how you must do it. We are more embracing more interactions, and that is why we even have the court users committees where various groups are represented and they can communicate that. And that is why we have those open days. And open days is like a market day. You just have your stall and someone comes to say, because we want to be real. And riding on what city says, that is why we know that if we tell you, I think when I was in Homa Bay, we tried an open day at the court. There were about 10 people.
Yeah.
And you could see them standing by the fence.
They're not sure if they can come in.
Yes. So we realized, go out there.
Yeah.
And all you need to do is reach out to one of their leaders. And tell them we would like to do a sensitization on this. And he'll mobilize so that they won't think this is a trap to arrest me.
Right.
As well, as we talk about it, there are several issues that you've highlighted throughout the conversation. And as we talk about these issues, there is the matter of budgeting and allocation of funds for you to be able to undertake the exercises that you're taking. Reaching out needs money, yet we know that funds are limited. As well as there is the fact that we have gender desks in police stations that ought to perform well. Some are doing a good job, some unfortunately are lagging behind. How is judiciary making sure that all gender desks, because you talk of a conveyor belt, and a conveyor belt in terms of investigations, how reporting is done, how documentation is done, filing of evidence is really important. So in terms of working together with the police, making sure that no one is lagging behind in making sure that these cases are processed well, and as well as time taken in adjudicating these issues. These are matters that Kenyans are asking. Why would I go to court if I can talk to my mzee wa mtaa and just deal with it at that point? So how do we also ensure that these cases don't end up at the mzee wa mtaa, but is brought to court and justice is dispensed with?
Let me start with the last question. So Article 159 allows us to embrace alternative justice systems. That includes the mzee wa mtaa, that includes elders sitting under a tree like they do in the Maasai land. But there are cases that they cannot be heard under the tree. But as a judiciary, what we do, let me talk about the association because I'm not the official spokesman. We become innovative. We started this conversation with a proverb about the ants unite and their mouths carry an elephant. So as an association, we became innovative and we have reached out to partners because we know we do not have financial muscle to do these things. So we have partners who we have vetted and have been vetted by the judiciary so that there's no conflict, who come and help us to ensure that these programs are rolled out and they're done, and we have a checklist on how it's working. For example, I gave an example of one of our partners called Equality Effect. So they have come up with a whole schedule on how they'll start with the police, and they'll do this and this and this. They engage the IG of police to do that. That is separate. Then they have gone to the prosecutors. They have a program, and now they're coming to the judiciary. They have a program. You see, this is one of the partners who is looking at a wholesome judicial system. So partnering with such a person or such an entity helps us as a judiciary. Number two, as Judge said, open days are important. And in the administration of justice, each court, during the budgeting process, currently we are doing the budgets of each court. Each court has what we call an AI holder who is mandated to hold the accounts of that court. So one of the things in the blueprint of her leadership is that we must be accessible. And one of the items that is in the budget is an open day. Each court must have an open day within the year. And an open day can be interpreted depending on where you are. You're in Lodwar, you go to the market. You're in Kajiado, go under the tree, let people come, go out there, not be within the court and put a tent and write a nice looking banner. So we are accessible through that open day. And we don't go there with our gowns and headgears. if you mingle around in the open day, you'd not know who is a magistrate. We are all in flat shoes. We are all wearing we're all smelling of sweat from walking from one point to another. So we are quite accessible. And Kenyans need to know that the judiciary actually cares.
Right.
It's just that we do not go with the placards. And as an association also, we are divided into regions so that each region, they have their own specific or uniqueness. For example, we have the Nairobi region. It's seen as upscale. Our problems are different from a region in Western. So each region has their own programs, and these programs are to the people. They go to the markets, they go to the prisons. So we are known, and they actually go. For example, I'll give an example of Kajiado, where I work. We have a local radio station where we frequent. It's called Buzz Radio. We speak in Maasai all the time. So it's just that the Nairobi team have not heard of such things, but each region has that kind of plan. Yeah. So we are accessible. Yes.
And I think maybe just to add on to that, in terms of equipping and empowering, we realize that if you have a constant female face, the men begin to feel like, it's the usual women thing. So we have within our membership, he for she, the men who are actually within the association. And I'll tell you, I had a meeting with them just this week on Wednesday. And one of the activities they have indicated they will undertake as men within the association, so as to give it an inclusive face, is in commemoration of the Women's Day. They will actually reach out now to the boys' schools to sensitize them on proper conduct between themselves and girls, coming from a man's perspective. Yeah.
Right.
And reach out even to the wazes in the mtaa, so that they can then speak to them, to the churches, to the mosques, so that it has that inclusive approach to it.
When you go out, and I think this is all, in line with what we're saying now in entrenching and protecting some of these rights, do you hear about the things that actually happen that don't make it to court? Because we live in a society, whether we want to admit it or not, where there are very many damaged people who are operating under the circumstance of abuse. And I'm not just talking about girls, because here we're talking about, championing the rights of women and girls. There are very many abused men. There are very many abused women. I sit in a group of support for women, and of the 110 women, 63 of them, 63 were either sexually abused by a relative growing up, or even today by somebody with close connectivity for themselves. But the interesting thing is that the last place they think of going
is the court.
Why?
Because they will say it's going to take too long. They don't have the money to start it. They don't have representation. And how are they going to face the shame of standing in front of family members tomorrow to say that you took your uncle or your brother or your father or your whomever to court? Those are real issues that are being dealt with today. How do we handle that? Or the mother who is absolutely going to say no, she will not. In some cases, will blame her daughter and say that you were wayward. Why did they rape you? It sounds terrible, but that is what is happening.
Okay, I think one of the things that as an association we have tried to work around is to encourage getting safe houses, so that where survivors can at least get some protection. And the only way that they can even be made to know that there are places where they can go and be safe is by reaching out to them. The other place that the other facility that is available is the witness protection. It's a whole world of things. It comes under the Witness Protection Act and the Witness Protection Program, where even a court may identify that this is a vulnerable witness who needs protection, and needs protection either to be away completely from wherever they are, needs to protection for relocation. So there are those. The only missing thing is that very few people are aware that these exist. And the only way, how will they know if we do not tell them, if we do not communicate to them? They will not. We cannot educate them only in court. We have to go out and tell them. But Siti and Do and Dennis, we seem to concentrate on sexual offences and femicide. But there are other instances where women are also disadvantaged.
Yes.
Especially in issues to do with succession,
land,
property, land. Yeah. We have very beautiful legislations that protect, but that is on paper. Yeah. In actual fact, the woman still remains the perpetual outsider, whether she remains in her parents' home or is married. You know, even when you're married, you're still the outsider. Yeah. So we need to reach out even to inform women on those, what are their rights, and to just let them know that there is no property in a body. So you don't have to have a body remain in a morgue for 3 years, all because you're contesting where it's going to be buried, because you think that where the body is buried will determine what you inherit. Yeah. But you see, many of our women are not aware of that. So we need to reach out to them. The only challenge in that is that when you put it in black and white, lazima niulize mzee kama naweza kuja hapo, because mzee might be thinking you're going to poison their minds. But there's a whole world of things out there that need to be, certainly SGBV and GBV, and there's also OGBV, online. Take center stage because of just the wide scale in which it is done, and the very heinous ways that sometimes it's done in. But there are also these everyday issues that need to be dealt with.
Justice, you both talked of partners.
Yeah.
Do you partner with religious organizations?
Oh, yes, we do. And partnering with religious organizations doesn't even need budgeting, because if I'm a member of a church, all I need to do is indicate to my pastor.
You know why I ask? Some of these very touchy social issues.
Yes.
It has been found that religious organizations tackle them better.
True.
Because there's a trust. What's the opposite of deficit? Credit. There's a trust credit that religious organizations tend to have with people, and the things they put across are listened to far more.
Yes.
I say this because the issue bedeviling women, whether it is succession, whether it's violence, the women don't perpetrate violence on themselves. It is men who perpetrate this violence, and the people they're most likely to listen to beyond their own family are religious leaders.
True.
Yes.
True.
And that's why I said we embrace Article 159, which talks about alternative justice systems. I'll give you a scenario where in Nakuru there is an alternative justice system, and it is spearheaded by the religious. So that they sit somewhere and people come with their problems, and they listen and make determinations. And the determination they make will come back to court as a report, and the court will adopt that as a judgment, and it concludes the matters quickly. So religious leaders are very important. Also in the court users committees, which each court must have CUC.
Yes.
Religious leaders form part of that. So we're encouraging, instead of you coming straight to court, not because we do not want to work, we are willing to work, but we are saying that there are many other avenues which cases can be concluded faster and properly, except the sexual matters. Succession can be concluded properly under a tree. And once it is concluded properly under a tree, unfortunately also, we have to be aware that, for example, the Maasai, the elders will sit under the tree. Most of the elders are men. I'm a woman, I've gone to say that I've not inherited, but I'm talking to the men who are adjudicating. So there must be a balance also. So what I'm saying is that we acknowledge that the religious and any other person who we have vetted as a judiciary, because they are vetted, because you can have rogue pastors giving the wrong information.
Yes, this is true.
So
there's no shortage of those.
Yes, they have to be vetted before they form that dispute resolution mechanism.
But to be fair to the Maasai, at least I know the Maasai of Olposmoru, that's up in the Mau. I worked with them when I was then a magistrate, and just when I joined the High Court. They have worked with a group known as Landesa. Landesa deals mainly with land issues, and Landesa did a great sensitization. They actually have women as elders. They've incorporated them.
Yes.
So I think it is all about reaching out to say that women can also make decisions.
Yes.
Women can also understand these issues. But you see, if I'm doing it as a woman, telling them, it will not work. Perhaps when another man tells them, then it would.
Well, I mean, there are many layered conversations that are still happening, discussions, issues that need to be taken care of, and we must continue to discuss them, even as we do. What would be your message on this? Coming up to International Women's Day tomorrow, but then also, of course, today, looking at the International Day of Women Judges. What is your message, Honourable Kamau, and yours as well, Lady Justice Omondi, as we get to the end of this conversation?
Okay, I'll first say that it is important for all our children who are girls to be lawyers.
Oh, okay.
That's one. Because when you're a lawyer, you have a better place to study the law and know your boundaries, negotiate better. And unfortunately, the African culture says that when you educate a woman, you educate the whole community, which is good. So when you're a lawyer and you're a woman and you're in that community, you bring good to the family. I'm not saying any other profession is not good, but lawyers are good. So what I'm saying is that we are going to celebrate Women's Day with our partners, with our men, because they're also important in the society. But we are saying that women also they are vulnerable, and we need our own day to celebrate these achievements.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'll go back to City's proverb, and my parting shot is that together we can transform. So in celebrating and commemorating the Women's Day tomorrow, I'm appealing to all of us as Kenyans, as human beings, to join our hands together to transform this country, this society, into a better place for everyone, where everybody's dignity is intact.
Thank you very much for joining this conversation today, even as we commemorate the International Day of Women Judges and get into International Women's Day tomorrow. The Lady Justice Hellen Omondi, Court of Appeal Judge and President of the International Association of Women Judges, as well as Honourable Jane Kamau, Principal Magistrate and Vice Secretary of the International Association of Women Judges. Thank you for being here on Kenya's biggest conversation this morning. Asante sana.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.